Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hills. Chapter 2. Thoughts Are Things. The man who thought his way into partnership with Thomas Alva Edison. Truly, thoughts are things, and powerful things, when they are mixed with definiteness of purpose, persistence, and a burning desire for their translation into riches or other material objects. Some years ago, Edwin C. Barnes discovered how true it is that you really can think and grow rich. His discovery did not come about at one sitting. It came little by little, beginning with a burning desire to become business associate of the great Thomas Edison. One of the chief characteristics of Barnes' desire was that it was definite. He wanted to work with Edison, not for him. Pay close attention to the story of how he turned his desire into reality, and you will have a better understanding of the principles that lead to riches. When this desire or this thought first flashed into his mind, he was in no position to act upon it. Two problems stood in his way. He did not know Mr. Edison, and he did not have enough money to buy a train ticket to West Orange, New Jersey, where the famed Edison laboratory was located. These problems would have discouraged the majority of people from making any attempt to carry out the desire, but his was no ordinary desire. The inventor and the tramp. Edwin C. Barnes presented himself at Mr. Edison's laboratory and announced that he had come to go into business with the inventor. Years later, in speaking about the first meeting, Mr. Edison said about Barnes, "He stood before me, looking like an ordinary tramp, but there was something in the expression of his face which conveyed the impression that he was determined to get what he had come after. I had learned from years of experience with men that when a man really desires a thing so deeply that he is willing to stake his entire future on a single turn of the wheel in order to get it, he is sure to win. I gave him the opportunity he asked for, because I saw he had made up his mind to stand by until he succeeded. Subsequent events proved that no mistake was made. I could not have been the young man's appearance that got him in his start in the Edison's office. That was definitely against him. It was what he thought that counted. Barnes did not get his partnership with Edison on his first interview. What he did get was a chance to work in the Edison's office at a very nominal wage. Months went by, nothing happened to bring nearer the goal that the Barnes had set as his definite major purpose. But something important was happening in Barnes' mind. He was constantly intensifying his desire to become the business associate of Mr. Edison. Psychologists have correctly said, when one is truly ready for a thing, it puts in its appearance. Barnes was ready for a business association with Edison, and he was determined to remain ready until he got what he was seeking. He did not say himself, well, what's the use? I guess I'll change my mind and try for a salesman job. But he did say, I come here to go into business with Edison, and I will accomplish my goal if it takes the remainder of my life. He meant it. What a different story people would tell if only they would adopt a definite purpose and stand by that purpose until it had time to become an all-consuming obsession. Maybe young Barnes did not know it at the time, but his bulldog determination and his persistence in focusing on a single desire was destined to mow down all the oppositions and bring him the opportunity he was seeking. When the opportunity came, it appeared in a different form and from a different direction that Barnes has expected. That is one of the tricks of opportunity. Yes, that is one of the tricks of opportunity. It has a sly habit of slipping in by the back door. And often it comes disguised in the form of misfortune or temporary defeat. Perhaps this is why so many people fail to recognize opportunity. Mr. Edison had just perfected a new device, known at that time as Edison dictating machine. His salesmen were not enthusiastic about the machine. They did not believe it could be sold without greater effort. Barnes saw his opportunity. It had crawled in quietly, hidden in a queer-looking machine that interested no one but Barnes and the inventor. Barnes knew he could sell the Edison's dictating machine, and he told Edison. So Edison decided to give him his chance, and Barnes did sell the machine. In fact, he sold it so successfully that Edison gave him a contract to distribute and market it all over the nation. Out of the business association, Barnes made himself rich in money, but he did something infinitely greater. He proved that you really can think and grow rich. How much actual cash that original desire of Barnes was worth to him, I have no way of knowing. Perhaps it bought him $2 or $3 million. $3 million in early years of the 20th century would be comparable to more than $50 million in terms of buying power at the beginning of the 21st century. But the amount of becoming significant compared with the greater asset he acquired, the definite knowledge that an intangible impulse of thought can be transmuted into material rewards by the application of known principles. Barnes literally thought himself into a partnership with a great Edison. He thought himself into a fortune. He had nothing to start with except knowing what he wanted and the determination to stand by that desire until he realized it. 3 feet from gold. One of the most common cause of failure in the habit of quitting when you are overtaken by temporary defeat. Every person is guilty of this mistake at one time or another. During the gold rush days, an uncle of my friend R.U. Darby was caught by gold fever and he went west to Colorado to dig and grow rich. He had never heard that more gold has been mined from the thoughts of man than has ever been taken from the earth. That's a really good line. He had never heard that more gold has been mined from the thoughts of man than has ever been from the earth. He staked a claim and went to work with pick and shovel. After weeks of labor, he was rewarded by the discovery of the shining ore. He needed the machinery to bring the ore to the surface. Quietly, he covered up the mine and returned to his home in Williamsburg, Maryland. He told his relatives and a few neighbors about the strike. They got together the money for the machinery and had it shipped. R.U. Darby decided to join his uncle and they went back to work the mine. The first car of ore was mined and shipped to smelter. The returns proved that they had one of the richest mines in Colorado. A few more cars of the ore would clear their debt. Then would come to big killing in profit. Down went the drills, up went the hopes of Darby and uncle. Then something happened. The vein of gold ore disappeared. They had come to the end of the rainbow and the pot of gold was no longer there. They drilled on, desperately trying to pick up the vein again, all to no avail. Finally, they decided to quit. They sold the machinery to a junk man for a few $100s and took the train back to home. The junk man called a mining engineer to look at the mine and do a little calculating. The engineer advised that the project had failed because the owners were not familiar with fault lines. His calculation showed that the vein would be found just 3 feet from where the Darby has stopped drilling. And that is exactly where it found. The junkman took millions of dollars in ore from the mine because he knew enough to seek expert counsel before giving up. Long afterward, Mr. Darby recouped his loss many times over when he made the discovery that desire can be transmuted into gold. This discovery came after he went into business of selling life insurance, never forgetting that he lost a huge fortune because he stopped 3 feet from gold. Darby profited by the experience in his newly chosen field. He simply said to himself, I stopped 3 feet from gold, but I will never stop because man says no when I ask them to buy insurance. Darby became one of a small group of men who sell over $1 million in life insurance annually. He owned his stickability. To the lesson he learned from his quitability in the gold mining business. Before success comes in anyone's life, that person is sure to meet with much temporary defeat and perhaps some failures. When defeat overtakes a person, the easiest and the most logical thing to do is to quit. That is exactly what the majority of people do. More than 500 of the most successful people in the country has ever known told me their greatest success came just step beyond the point at which defeat has overtaken them. Failure is a trickster with a keen sense of irony and cunning. It takes great delight in tripping you just when success is almost within reach. A 50-cent lesson in persistence. Shortly after Mr. Darby received his degree from the University of Hard Knocks, he witnessed something that proved to him that no does not necessarily means no. One afternoon, he was helping his uncle grind wheat in an old-fashioned mill. The uncle operated a large farm on which a number of farmers lived. Quietly, the door was opened and a small child, the daughter of tenant, walked in and took her place near the door. The uncle looked up, saw the child and barked at her roughly. What do you want? Meekly the child replied, My mom says to send her 50 cents. I'll not do it, the uncle retorted. Now you run to home. But she did not move. The uncle went ahead with his work, not noticing that she did not leave. When he looked up again and saw her still standing there, he said, I told you to go on home. Now go, or I will take a switch on you. But she did not budge. The uncle dropped a sack of grain he was about to pour into the mill hopper and started towards the child. Darby held his breath. He knew his uncle had a fierce temper. When the uncle reached the spot where the child was standing, she quietly stepped forward 1 step, looked up into his eyes and screamed at the top of her voice, My mom's gotta have that 50 cents. Uncle stopped, looked at her for a minute, put his hand in his pocket, took out $50 and gave it to her. The child took the money and slowly backed towards the door, never taking her eyes off the man whom she just had conquered. After she had gone, the uncle sat down on a box and looked out the window into space for more than 10 minutes. He was pondering with awe over the whipping he had just taken. Mr. Darby too was doing some thinking. That was the first time in all his experience that he had seen a child deliberately master an adult. How did she do it? What happened to the uncle that caused him to lose his fierceness and become as docile as a lamb? What strange power did this child use to make her master of the situation? These situations flashed into Darby's mind, but he did not find the answer until years later when he told me the story. Strangely, the story of this unusual experience was told to me in the old mill. on the very spot where the uncle took his whipping. As we stood there in the musty old mill, Mr. Darby repeated the story and finished by asking, "What can you make of it? What strange power did the child use that so completely whipped my uncle?" The answer to all his questions will be found in the principles described in this book. The answer is full and complete. It contains enough details and instructions for you to understand and apply same force that the little child accidentally stumbled upon. Keep your mind alert and you will learn exactly what strange power came to the rescue of the child. You may catch a glimpse of the power in this chapter, or it may flash into your mind in some other chapter. If you stay alert to the possibility, somewhere you will find the idea that will quicken your receptive power and place at your command this same irresistible power. It may come in the form of a single idea, or it may come as a complete plan or a purpose. It may even cause you to go back over your past experience of failures, of defeat. And in doing so, it may bring to the surface some lessons by which you can regain all that you lost through defeat. After I had explained to Mr. Darby the power unwittingly used by the little child, he mentally retraced his 30 years as a life insurance salesman. As he did so, it became clear to him that his success was due in no small degree to the lesson he had learned from the child. Mr. Darby pointed out, every time a prospect tries to bow me out without buying, I saw that child standing there in the old mill, in her big eyes glaring in defiance. And I said to myself, I've got to make this deal. The better portion of all sales I have made were made after people have said no. He also recalled his mistake in having stopped only 3 feet from gold, but he said that experience was a blessing in disguise. It taught me to keep on keeping. No matter how hard the going may be. A lesson I needed to learn before I could succeed in anything. Mr. Darby's experience were commonplace and simple enough, yet they held the answer to his destiny in life. In fact, to him, the experience was as important as life itself, and he was able to profit from these 2 important experiences because he analyzed them and found the lesson they taught. But what if you don't see the events of your life as being experience of such profound significance? And what about the young person who doesn't yet have even minor failures to analyze? Where and how will they learn the art of conveying defeats into stepping stones to opportunity? That is exactly why this book has written, to answer those questions. To convey my answers, I have constructed 13 principles. These principles work individually or together as a catalyst. The specific answer that you are looking for may already be in your own mind. Reading these principles may be the catalyst that caused your answer or to suddenly came to you as an idea, a plan, or a purpose. One sound idea is all you need to achieve success. These 13 principles contain the best and the most practical ways and means of creating ideas. Success consciousness. Before I go any further in the description of the principles, you should know this. When riches begin to come, they come so quickly and in such greater abundance that you will wonder where they have been hiding during all these lean years. This is an astounding statement, especially when you take into consideration the popular belief that riches come only to those who work hard and long. When you begin to think and grow rich, You will observe that riches begins with the state of mind, with definiteness of purpose, with little or no hard work. What you need to know is how to acquire this state of mind that will attract riches. I spent 25 years researching the answer to the question because I too wanted to know how wealthy men become that way. What you learn is that as soon as you master the principle of this philosophy and begin to apply the principles, your financial status will begin to improve. Everything you touch will begin to transmute itself into an asset for your benefit. Impossible. Not at all. Not at all. One of the main weaknesses that average person suffer is too much familiarity with the word impossible. We know all the rules that will not work. We know all the things that cannot be done. This book was written for those who seek the rules that have made others successful and are willing to stake everything on those rules. Success comes to those who become success conscious. Failure comes to those who allow themselves to become failure conscious. The object of this book is to help you learn the art of changing your mind from failure consciousness to success consciousness. Another weakness is the habit of measuring everything and everyone by your own impression and beliefs. Some of you reading this will have trouble believing that you can think and grow rich because your thought and habits have been stabbed in poverty, misery, failure and defeat. The kind of thing reminds me of the story about the man who came from China to study at the University of Chicago. One day, President Harper met this young man on campus and stopped to chat with him for a few minutes. He asked what had impressed him as being the most noticeable character of the American people. "Why?" the student exclaimed. "The unusual shape of your eyes?"